All right, 9 o'clock. We're ready to go. Welcome to our webinar, and we're going to be talking about making the ARC PLC decision under the 28th Farm Bill. I'm Gary Schnittke, Jonathan Koppas, Nick Polson, and Doug Yoder will be doing this webinar, and we'll be getting this going. Just a couple notes. We do have handouts available on our GoToWebinar panel, so everything that you see on the slide will be shown here up on that is also available, so go to those. We'll also have these webinars archived, so you'll be able to get those on FarmDoc. Again, if you want to submit questions, please do so, and we'll handle those questions as we're going through this webinar. One other note here before we get going, all our information on Farm Bill is up here at our Farm Bill Toolbox. So if you go there, you can see our 2018 Farm Bill Toolbox. We have two tools that we make use of, our Gardener Payment Calculator, which is right here, and our 2018 Farm Bill tool, which is right here. So those we will be referring to as we're going through this presentation. So we're ready to go. Our outline. Price loss coverage. So what we're going to do is do price loss coverage in ARC County by crop. And here's the general results. If you're corn, we would say lean to PLC at this point in time, and we'll talk more about that. Soybeans lean to ARC County, wheat lean heavily to PLC. All right, Jonathan's looking at me. He says that's a done deal or something like that.
I mean, that's an understatement.
All right, well. All right, so then we'll talk about ARC-IC whole farm. We'll go over the supplemental coverage option, and we'll do PLC yield updating. Again, we're getting ready here for the March 15th, 2020 deadline. That's the big one. You have to make by that day your ARC PLC choices for both the 2019 and 2020 year. You lock in the choice for both the 2019 and 2020 year when you make that decision. And you also enroll in the 2019 program year. You also have opportunity then to enroll for the 2020 by June 30th and September 30th is the deadline for PLC updating yields, which we will talk about, but isn't as an eminent thing as this March 15th deadline. Your FSA offices want to see you all there sooner rather than later.
Or at the very least, sign up in advance and get on the list so we don't have a complete mess at the deadline.
All right, we already have a question about SCO, and we will get there. So just let us go. So again, the choices here that you have, you will make a choice between price loss coverage in ARC County on an FSA farm by farm basis. And you can have corn enrolled in PLC, soybeans in ARC, wheat in PLC or ARC. So those are FSA farms. You can make different decisions by FSA farms. You can also choose to do ARC individual coverage here. And we would suggest those farms that have all prevent plant for FSA farm really look hard at that, as well as those with low yields. Again, can vary decisions by FSA farm. 2019 and 2020 is our March 15th deadline, and then you'll have a decision year by year after that. Base acres will not change this time around. All right, PLC. Nick?
Yeah, PLC, no major changes in terms of how the program operates. Again, remains fairly similar to even how the countercyclical program that worked prior to PLC being introduced in 2014. So if the marketing year average price falls below the effective reference price for the crop, you're paid the difference multiplied by the PLC yield on the farm, and you get paid on 85% of the base acres in that crop. Other minor tweaks to that, they changed a bit how the effective reference price is calculated. The potential for that to increase through the escalator provisions, although a lot of the things we've talked about in the past few months show that that's probably not going to be an issue. Looking at $370 for corn, $840 for beans, and $550 for wheat being those prices. Your market year average, just a reminder that is a national cash average price received throughout the marketing year, which is September to August for corn and beans. and June to May for wheat. And then on the other thing to think about here is if PLC is elected, the farm remains eligible for the supplemental coverage option. We'll talk about a little bit later in the webinar in terms of a crop insurance option.
Effective reference price, higher of 85% of 5-year moving average, or the reference price. Here's our reference prices for corn, 370. Those didn't change. 840 for soybeans, 550 for wheat. This 85% will not come into play for 2019 and 2020, and probably not for 21, 22, 23, or 24.
Yeah, right. Because remember, this is a 5-year Olympic moving average for you. So you're going to drop out a high year if we actually get a spike year on prices. So the odds of this ever coming into play, certainly not for this decision, but for the next 5 years to be able to get above the current price would have to take at least 2 years of really high prices to pull that up.
Yeah, and it's not likely. It's very much not likely to happen. So that's PLC. Now we're going to take PLC and ARC County for corn. And by the way, those of you who are asking questions about ARC-IC, we will get there. So hang on. For corn, so we're going to do corn first. And again, we're just looking at the PLC and ARC County decision here. We're going to do that for corn, soybeans, and wheat, and why we sort of lean towards PLC. All right, so we're going to show those payments for corn. We're going to estimate the 2019 payments, and we're going to do this with slides from our Farm Bill tool. All right, so here is calculation of PLC payments, and we're using a 385 USDA January forecast for the 2019 market year average price. This 385 was released by USDA in January. Jonathan has something you're going to say.
No, I was just going to say this has been updated in the Gardener tool and in the Fast What If tool as well. So we're now using the most up-to-date prices.
Yep. And history would suggest that if there's a 385 price, there's a 13% chance that the 2019 market year average price will be below 370. We look at history and say, here's a January price. What are the chances of those falling enough to trigger payments? 13%. So roughly 9 out of 10 years, we will not see a PLC payment for 2019.
And what Gary's describing there is kind of addressing a question that came in terms of how does the calculator that we have online indicate a PLC payment when the market year average price is above the reference price. The distinction there is it's an expected PLC payment in our calculator, and it reflects the chance that we think the price is going to be 385. That's what USDA is forecasting, but there is a chance that it could fall below that 370. And so that's why you see a positive expected price for PLC in our calculator.
Yep, and we're saying right now, 13% chance for 2019. So, but a 385 price is obviously above the 370 effective price, so we would not get a payment if that, in fact, turns out to be the 2019 market year average price. We're going to show exactly that in our tool right now. So here's our tool. This is available again from our folks from NCSA. Go to that website. You also have a link to there from our 2018 Farm Bill tool. Here's what you get if you dial in Illinois, Henry County corn. You'll see the estimates for 2019, 2020, and throughout the years. We're going to focus here on 2019. Again, this is PLC here. You'll see we have a 13% chance of a payment in 2019. That comes from history. We're betting the price is 385, but there's a 13% chance of being below 370, and that's why we get our expected payment of 113. We're betting in Henry County right now a 7% chance of our county payment. That still is based on expected yield of 208. That expected yield is going to change after the February 20th release of NASS yields. NASS yields are not what they use in these calculations, but they'll be what we want to we're going to use here, and that's why we're saying there's a 7% chance. After the NASS release, this number is going to go up or down, and this probability will either go towards zero if if this number goes down, or it'll go up to 100, nearer 100% if this number turns out to be 165. So right now, though, from what I would guess, and Doug may want to chime in here, but a lot of the state, we would not expect to see ARC County payments.
I will admit, Gary, I've done a few counties where they think they may have a shot at a smaller county payment where yields were really bad, but that's rare.
Okay, so this happens to be Henry County corn. And let me just do the 2020. Right now, even though we're betting a 371 price for 2020, but there's about a 53% chance of being below that for 2020. And you can put your own odds on that. But we're saying, there's a pretty good chance of pretty low prices in those years, and that would result in a relatively large expected payment.
And Gary, we did have a question on how you could maybe guess at or predict marking your average for 2020. You want to just briefly say where that 371 comes from in terms of what we're doing?
We're doing this as sort of looking at what USDA long run prices come at, and they're sort of in that 370 range for the long run price. You can change those, by the way, right here if you want to look at different long run prices. All right, ARC County. So we're saying right here, we're going to make a 13% chance of payment. Here's how ARC County works. It makes payments when we're below 86% of the benchmark revenue. You're not eligible for SCO. We'll describe that. Go ahead.
Oh, no, just a reminder, those benchmarks are both 5-year Olympic moving averages as well. So
Yep,
we see a lot of similarity in the calculations.
this benchmark year is a 5-year Olympic average. Here's what that looks like for Henry County. This is the county yield for Henry County for 2013 through 2017. This is lagged 1 year. This time, though, trend adjusted, which is the trend for Henry County, is 223. They multiply that by the number of years that we go back. In this case, the 2013 yield is 6 years back. We get a 13-year trend adjustment, and that comes up with 193, which is 180 plus 13.4. Our benchmark yield is 215.2.
And again, trying to address questions as they come in, just to clarify confusion. Gary's mentioning this February 20th NAS yield update and how we'll be able to put a little bit more certainty around things for the 2019 year once we have those yields. The question is correct that we've got that FSA is not using NAS yields for these programs, but they should be relatively close to NAS yields. We don't know what the 2019 yields will be. We won't know those until August. And it's true that they are prioritizing the use of RMA yields this time around rather than NAS, but the NAS yields that'll come out on the 20th will give us a better sense of where we think that the county yields will be. But again, it is accurate that that's not the exact yields that will be used to determine these programs. That being said, the history you see on the screen are the yields that FSA uses, is using to set the benchmarks. And this, again, is the specific example of Henry County, but those are the correct yields. Those are not NAS yields. Those are the yields that FSA uses for the ARC County program.
Hey, Gary, just FYI, now that we're using crop insurance data for the county yield estimates, the deadline to report production from last year is April 29th. So on county-based crop insurance policies, they're now saying we can pay that claim June 16th. So it'll take about a month to do the tabulation after that April 29th deadline. So if we're able to pay a county-based claim, obviously we'll have the county-based yields hopefully by early June.
Yep. And again, February 20th, we will not know the yield.
Correct.
But NAS yields will give us a better feel for those counties that will pay and not pay.
And I just want to highlight again, in this benchmark yield calculation, the trend yield adjustment is a new feature that was added to the ARC County program in 2018. So that wasn't there the last time. And as you can see on the screen, I mean, it can make a significant difference in the yield part of this equation, which is, I think, an improvement on the program and the features of that program from the 14 version. So just so we don't lose that as well, that we've really updated the way the yields get calculated in this benchmark.
I went the wrong way here. Here's benchmark price. The benchmark price for 2019 will be 370. Same thing for 2020. We know the benchmark price for 2020 will be 370 as well. And we know that because these are the higher of the effective reference price or the actual MYA price will be used. All of those will be 370. We'll throw out the high and the low, and it's going to be 370 for 2019 and 2020. That gives us, here's our, if we take we're doing Henry County 177 bushel yield for 2019, 385 market year average price, we get our county payment of $3 per acre. We set this 177 just so that it triggers a payment. All right. If you have 178, there will be zero payment. All right. We do not get a PLC payment at 385. So what we're going to do now is show you all those break-even yields across counties in Illinois. So we did this for every county in Illinois, and here's what's result.
Yeah. So basically, how low does your county yield have to come in to trigger our county payment at the price we're expecting for 2019?
Yep. So if you're looking at this, McLean County would have to have a price below, or excuse me, a yield below 186. Champaign 181. Go down here. I think this is Jefferson 122. DeKalb would be 173. So that'll give you a feel. These are non-irrigated yields on this side. These are irrigated yields on this side. All right. So choosing between these. PLC not likely to make a payment in 2019. ARC County in May and certain counties. 2020 50-50 chance in ARC County. ARC County would trigger with regional specific low yields, and that's what we're looking for 2020 for those. Or what we're looking for the February 20th is those counties where ARC County may make a payment. Again, watch for our February 20th, and our release will be on February 24th. That date will tell you what we think the counties are where this, based on those NASH yields, where we think those payments can be triggered. All right, that's corn. Soybeans. So we're going to move into soybeans. Here's USDA released a $9 estimate on January. $9 is well above our $8.40. And history would say, if we're looking at this, we got a 4% chance this year of that market year average price being below $8.40. Not very high. 1 in 25 years. So right now we would be saying that PLC will not likely make a payment in 2019. 2020, we're using a $9 price. That would still be above our effective reference price. You can make the case that those may be lower.
Yeah, and we have a question that's up here for a while on this escalator provision in the PLC program. So you can see it here again, that you would take the 5-year Olympic moving average of these prices, dropping the high, dropping the low, and then 85% of that. And it would have to be above the 840 or 370 in the case of corn to actually pull that reference price up. So you can see why we're saying it's not going to have any impact, because you would need multiple years of a jump in prices to be able to pull that up at 85% of that. So just that question had been up there for a while, so you can see it in this screen as clearly as anything that 85% of that is what, 819. So we're at no point close to that reference price to move it up.
All right, so here's, again, Henry County. We use a $9 market year average price. County yield of 57 bushels per acre would trigger an ARC County payment of $4. So if we have a $9 market year average price, Henry County, 57 bushels would trigger an ARC County payment in 2019. So if we
58 would be nothing.
58 would
So
be
again,
nothing.
same idea. That's kind of where at the point at which the ARC County would get triggered by the yield coming in low enough.
So these are all our break even. This is non-irrigated on this side. This is irrigated on this side. You can see McLean County would have to have a county yield below 62. Go down here, Saline. I think I'm getting close to Southern Illinois, at least 49. 34 down here. Here's DeKalb 59. You can see some of the yields. So we have to be below mid 50s in northern Illinois, and 60s in central Illinois, and 40s and 50s in southern Illinois. Again, we will know more about that. My guess is that I don't know. So what do you think, Doug?
Again, when I travel, Gary, I've had a few counties that we've done this presentation that think they have obviously a little better shot at an ARC County payment on beans than corn. Some counties are expecting their yields to be below these break evens, but not by much.
Yep. One question came in, are there break-even maps by other states? We do. If you look at our last Tuesday FarmdocDaily article, there's a spreadsheet attached to that article that does these break-evens for every state in the nation. So go to our break-even last time, and I will try and show you that we have those calculated for every break-even in the nation. All right. Here's soybeans from our FarmDoc Gardener What If tool. Here again, Illinois, Henry County soybeans, 4% chance of a PLC payment. And by the way, any county that you put in here will be a 4% chance. It doesn't vary. And we come up with the 20-cent premium. We're coming in with a little higher probability on soybeans. Again, we will be updating these numbers after our February 20th release, but we lean more towards soybeans than corn. And next year, we're about half, 50 or 25% on both of those. So make your choice.
Roll the dice.
Roll the dice. And PLC, not likely to make payments, could make payments, and we'll know more about the counties where that's likely on February 20th. 2020, you have to have a market year average price below 840. That would be a bad year. If that happened, that would be a very bad year. That hasn't happened in the last 6 or 7. We're not saying that could not happen, but that would be a bad year. And it's not likely, but you never want to say never either. For 2020, you would need a combination of low yields and non-increasing prices to generate payments. And we would lean towards ARC County. Actually, if I were a farmer, I'd probably go in and sign up now, get your decisions made, and then you can always change it later by March 15th. All right.
And the FSA folks are cringing.
I guess I don't feel comfortable making a solid, we know that information is coming. So, sign up, but be aware that information is coming. Here's wheat. Wheat, we're going to do, Henry, you can see here our effective reference price is $5.50. We won't be above the escalator cost won't come in again. Right now, there's a $4.55 price projected for 2019. Very high chances of that making a payment. Actually, we do. I'm sorry. There's we forgot to put change this to wheat. There's a very high chance of wheat.
I say at this point where prices are, it's pretty much for 2019 a lock on a PLC payment for wheat.
Yep. Here's our tool. We're saying 100% chance.
Look at that, 100% chance. We don't do that very often.
99.
99.99%.
That's like when the weatherman says there's a 100% chance of rain.
So there's a pretty good chance of it, and it's going to be pretty large. Our county actually has a really good chance of making a payment too, but in most cases, the ARC County payment is going to be lower than the PLC payment. If you get something in the 50 bushel range for your PLC payment, your ARC County payment will likely be lower than the PLC. We would suggest putting your PLC payment in here to see what those likelihoods are.
Your PLC yield.
PLC yield.
What Gary's referring to there on the 50 bushel number.
That's the item that you can update for this year, and you should know that for your individual farm. Our FSA has records on those for your individual farms. but we see pretty high probability of wheat payments. Again, 100% for 2019 and pretty high for 2020 as well. So given that, we also we looked at wheat payments and looked at those break evens. Here, there are wheat county yields released already. Some of these counties, you see the counties listed here, the break-even yield is below what's NAS reporting the yield, so there would not be an ARC County payment. So NAS released wheat yields in December for wheat. So if we just look at those NAS yields compared to break-even yields, these counties would not have a payment. These counties could have a payment on wheat. So
and again, these NAS yields are not what will be used to actually calculate payments by FSA, but they should be within a few bushels. So gives us a pretty good idea of what the payments could look like.
And just, we have a question of the market year average prices. It is a NAS number. They calculate that. It's a national cash price. For wheat, it runs from June to August. And for corn and soybeans, September to August. So.
And it literally is an average throughout the marketing year based on when farmers market their grain of the cash price received by farmers on a national basis. So it's not a futures number. It is affected by basis patterns across the country, if you will. And it is a national average. It's not specific to a state. At least the national number is what they use for these programs.
So wheat, PLC will make large payments. It will depend on the size of your PLC yield for your farm. ARC County will make payments in many counties, but likely less than PLC. PLC has a good chance of payments in 2020. So does ARC County, but likely, again, less than PLC. We lean to PLC. So there you go. All right. So if you're looking at those for crops and you're not going to enroll in ARC-IC, you sort of lean towards PLC for corn. And again, we'll know more about the counties where ARC County will make payments. You lean towards ARC County on soybeans, although I could see somebody saying next year could be a bad year, and lean towards PLC on wheat. Anybody? So
On wheat?
yeah,
Wheat. PLC at a 550 reference price on wheat. That's the easiest decision you're going to have. If you've got wheat base, you enroll in PLC, and on corn and soybeans, the decision between them is just incredibly difficult. And I think the break-even yields give you something to really think about. If you think those yields are going to fall enough to push into an ARC County payment, I think that's a really great way to think about what might tip the scales a little bit on that decision.
Well, I think the other thing to keep in mind is it's not like we're looking at both program choices having a 60% or 70% chance of triggering payments here. We're literally looking at the decision between two programs that are both unlikely to trigger support in the next 2 years based on what we're seeing about, where we think yields are going to be and prices are going to be. So, we can agonize over this decision on corn and soybean base, but the reality we're in right now is it's going to be unlikely we're going to get a payment from either one of these programs. Again, unless you're in one of those counties this year where we see yields coming in low enough to trigger an ARC County payment. Agree with that? I mean,
Yep.
We spent a lot of time talking about this, but it's low likelihoods of payments in general on corn and soybean based the next 2 years.
Yep. All right, so now we're going to move on into ARC-IC. We are going to use our 2018 Farm Bill tool just to go through the calculations and show what's going on with ARC-IC. ARC-IC is, again, you make this, again, by farm choice. ARC-IC equals the producer's shares in all FSA farms enrolled in ARC-IC. You combine all program crops. It's a farm yield model. One of the important things is it pays on 65% of base acres rather than the 85% for ARC County and PLC. Over time, you would expect those other two programs to make higher payments, but we have special knowledge in 2019. So we might as well look at this, and it will pay the maximum payment if all of the FSA farm are prevent plant. So if you have one FSA farm number that's all prevent plant, you're going to get the highest payment that you possibly can from ARC-IC, which could be $40, $50 per acre. Now, do you remember what Nick just said? There's low likelihood of payment of any of these other programs in 2019 and 20. So you can get $40, $50 on ARC-IC for a prevent plant farm. You might want to take it, which isn't to say that next year you won't get a PLC payment, but you know, it's a bird in the hand. Bird in the hand. So we're going to, again, look at this as with our ARC-IC calculator. This does one farm, and it's in the 2018 Farm Bill tool. One FSA farm. All right. So if you do that, this happens to be so if you do that, you're going to choose your county that you're located in and number of program crops. We're going to do corn and soybeans here. This is the corn page. What you're going to do is enter the yields for 2013 to 2017. You planted the crop in all years, and here are your farm yields. That is what's going to be used to calculate your benchmark revenue. Our benchmark revenue for this crop is $838.67 per acre. These yields, you should know those yields for these farms. In fact, those are the yields you would use for a PLC update. So those are the same yields. Enter those here, and essentially you use the farm yield times a price, which is either the market year average price or the effective reference price, whichever's higher. Multiply those together, and then the benchmark revenue for corn will be the Olympic average. Throw out the high, throw out the low, and then you get the benchmark revenue. That's all based on your farm yield from 2013 through 2017. If you did not plant the crop, say you did not plant the crop in 2019, you enter no here. They will use the county yield for benchmark revenue calculation in that year. Answering no here means that this 219 will enter into the calculation. Also, if your farm yield is below 80% of the T yield, the T yield will be used. This T yield and this county yield are county specific, and that's why you have to enter your county, the location of the FSA farm. So given that, this farm has an $838 benchmark revenue. All right. Here's soybeans. Same thing for soybeans. You enter your yields from 2013 through 2017. Same calculation. You come down with a benchmark revenue of $665. All right. That will work. So, all right. So those are the calculations for crops on a FSA farm. All right, we have an example here of an ARC-IC payment. We have the benchmark revenue for corn and soybeans here. For corn and soybeans, these numbers, these benchmark revenues for these crops come from the previous slide. So this 665 here is from this input right here. When you calculate a payment for 2019, you enter your prevent plant acres, and this farm has all of it prevent plant. This has 80 acres of prevent plant corn, 20% prevent plant acres for soybeans. You get $803.96 benchmark revenue, which is the weighted average of corn and soybeans here. If you had more farms in this, that's how those weighted averages would be calculated. Guarantee is 86% of this. And then in this case, with all prevent plant, we have zero farm revenue, and we would get the maximum ARC-IC payment, which is 10% of this benchmark revenue And then we multiply it by 0.65 because you get paid on 0.65% of the acres. So if you've got a FSA farm, all prevent plant, you're going to get the maximum ARC-IC payment for that individual case. Okay?
For 2019.
For
But the
2019.
decision then covers 19 and 20, so
Right now, I would just be betting on 0 for
for
2020.
20, yeah. But it's better, again, 52 is better than 0. So.
Yep. By the way, so if you have 100, so you would take this number times the total base acres in that farm. It doesn't matter whether they're corn or soybeans, you would take the total base acres in the farm. All right. So that is 80-20. Now, our next example has 80-20 planted. The minute you plant anything, the prevent plant acres don't matter. You don't want an FSA farm because in this case we have the revenue will be calculated based on what's planted. If there's only 5 acres of soybeans planted, the whole thing will be based on 5 acres of soybeans planted. The prevent plant do not enter into the calculations. In this case, I have 80, and again, we should be knowing what the 2019 yield is. Well, let's say we have 190 and 55. I'm using our $3.85 and $9 market year average prices. We would get a $4.69 payment here. Okay. If you lower these numbers here, you'll get a higher payment, obviously. You lower these numbers, you'll get a higher payment. Again, you know, the minute we plant any of an FSA farm to any crop, it is averaged based on those plantings. So,
Which is why I think we're saying that it's worth looking into for 100% prevent plant, but you really, it's a fairly narrow set of farms in which you're going to have this option make sense.
Yep.
Not that you shouldn't explore it, but just keep in mind that, you know, sort of measure or temper your expectations around whether or not it's 100% prevent plant on that FSA farm.
Sorry, we're getting a number of questions on, you know, where those yields come from in the history when you're doing your ARC-IC calculations. Kind of one set of questions talking about cases where maybe it's a farm that you've picked up and you weren't farming it at some point or over the entirety of that 2013 to 2017 period. One option always is to use the transition yields, right, Gary?
Yep. So,
you know, I've also heard, you know, guys obtaining the production records from who was farming it, if that's feasible. You know, I believe that's okay to do that as well. So, you know, it actually doesn't change it. You may not be in physical possession of the production records you could use to prove a yield history. But if you could obtain those, you could use those. Otherwise, the T yields are always an option. Kind of another set of questions we're getting on, you know, what if you're in a rotation? You know, obviously we're rotating between corn and beans, for example. So you may have only planted corn on this farm 3 out of those 5 years. Those are the 3 yields that matter. You don't need a yield for all 5 years. If you didn't plant the crop, then there isn't a yield, and it's based on the years in which you did plant it.
So since we got the question, we're going to show you a case. This is the ARC-IC calculator if you didn't plant every year. So this is the case. LaSalle County Farm, you had a 2013 planting, you had a rotation. 2015 you planted, 2017 you planted. So this is our corn benchmark. 2014 and 2016 you did not plant. So you don't have a yield. If you say no here, this county yield comes into is the yield used in calculating your benchmark revenue. Same thing, if you go down here for soybeans, we have this case here. We planted soybeans in 2014 and 16, 13, 15, and 17, the county yields are used. Again, if you did not have this year, let's say this was 10, all right, 10, 80% of the T is going to be used. So if you don't have your yields, 80% of the T would be used in the calculation. All right, so those are the yields. Again, it's the farm yields that matter. All right. Are there anything else we should be mentioning about ARC-IC? General rule, consider taking it if you have very low yields or all prevent plant. Remember, all FSA farms are combined, and it's somewhat doubtful if this situation will pay in the long run for those cases. So here's our summary. Be aware for the ARC County PLC decisions. ARC-IC for all FSA farms would prevent plant low yields. PLC and ARC will likely make payments in 2020. Think about PLC for corn. Think about ARC County for soybeans and wheat, PLC. Remember, we're going to have the February 20th release. We don't expect that to change much, but we'll be doing a webinar on February 24th with those more up-to-date information. Here's our resources that you can go look at for those decisions, and again, you can look at those items for those specific PLC, ARC County, and ARC-IC tools. Go look at our tool webinar here. All right, we're now supplemental coverage is available if we take PLC. That's become an alternative. So we're going to describe that now.
Gary, as our listeners, I'm sure know, SCO supplemental coverage option was first offered and authorized in the 2014 Farm Bill and again in the 2018 Farm Bill. Now, truth be known, that 2014 Farm Bill in Illinois is by and large a non-event because the vast majority of our acres signed up for ARC County, so they weren't eligible for SCO. This time, obviously, this Farm Bill provides more flexibility. They can change their mind, so obviously more farmers probably want to at least investigate this to see if it is something they may want to consider. And obviously, right off the bat, we know some farmers want or need extra coverage. Not everybody's in that situation. Some farmers aren't wanting extra coverage, and that's what this is. This is extra county-based crop insurance coverage they can stack on top of their farm level coverage. It's only available if you use a farm level crop insurance such as yield protection, YP, or revenue protection, RP. Kicks in at 86% of the county either yield or revenue based on what they're buying. That 86% should sound familiar. That's the same coverage level basically that ARC uses. That's why they don't get both. They can only take this, as you've mentioned, if they take PLC. As I mentioned, it's county-based coverage, although which means it will operate similarly to other county-based crop insurance policies such as ARP, Ag Risk Protection, but there's no multiplier. In ARP, you can magnify the size of your claim based on what they call a protection level. This county-based tool, SCO, does not offer that. It is available in all counties for corn, beans, and wheat in Illinois. Since it's county-based insurance, it's going to use the same expected county yields that we use in crop insurance county-based policies and the same harvest initial price guarantees and the harvest price guarantees as well. In other words, the February average and the October average. And just FYI, a little background, in Illinois, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, about in excess of 30% of all policies we saw farmers purchase were what we call GRIP back then, the county-based policies. Last year, we're down to about 5. So obviously the popularity of county-based crop insurance isn't near as much as it was, as high as it was at one time. And that is what this is. This is county-based crop insurance. So again, it simply matches what you buy on your base policy. So an example, if you buy yield protection, which gives you farm level yield coverage, then SCO would give you additional county-based yield coverage. If you buy RP, like most Illinois farmers, that's revenue coverage on farm level revenues. SCO would give you additional county-based revenue coverage on top of your RP coverage, and so on. As we mentioned, it kicks in at 86%, and it goes down to whatever coverage level the farmer purchases. So if you buy 85% coverage level, the max, and SCO kicks in at 86, you're only talking 1% extra coverage. Not that significant. However, if you buy lower coverage levels, and of course you would get higher SCO coverage. And here that is graphically. And actually the most popular coverage level choice amongst Illinois farmers is 85%, the maximum. So as I've indicated, the green bar there would be your 85% coverage level that, let's say, RP provides. The yellow band would be the 1% extra coverage that SCO gives you, giving you a net deductible then of 14%. And as you lower your coverage level, obviously, then you would obviously be able to purchase more SCO. Now, I will tell you, last year in 2019, we'll get to the reason why later, but in 2019, we did see a fair amount of SCO purchased across Illinois, telling me that evidently farmers are needing extra coverage, at least certain farmers are. What I didn't see and what I really don't want to see is farmers lowering their farm level RP coverage just so they can get more SCO. We don't mind farmers buying extra coverage if they wanted or needed, but I hate to see them lower their personal coverage on their farm just to replace it with more county coverage. If they like the county coverage, they'd be buying it, but they're not. They're by and large buying RP. So here's a quick example. Gary, I know for the sake of time, we've got quite a few questions and you still want to go through the yield update. So I'm going to fast forward through this example. They've got it in their handout. They can look at the extra coverage that this can stack on top of their RP coverage. They can see the calculations that we're doing here. And what you're buying, obviously, is that band of coverage there in yellow. And you can see the coverage kicks in this example at 86% would be $619 of county revenue. The yellow band of coverage ends at the 80% coverage level, since that's how much RP this farm is buying. So that band of coverage kicks in at $619. It shuts off at $576. So you do that math, that's $43 of coverage they're adding on top of their RP coverage in this example. This tool also calculates the max payment, which uses your actual trend adjusted APH shown right here in 190 on this farm. So they actually, even though it's a county-based tool, it does use your personal trend adjusted APH to calculate your max payment times that February price of corn. Last year is $4. Since we're getting 6% of coverage, this particular farm's max payment would be $45.60. Then to calculate the possible claim, they just calculate the county's final revenue, final county yield times that year's harvest price, calculate how much short the county revenue came in below the county trigger, in this case, $619. This example, we said it came in $19 short. $19 in the $43 coverage range they purchased is a 44% shortfall. Take that 44% shortfall times a max payment of $45. So this farm would have a $20 claim. A little more complicated how they calculate the claim than they do on regular crop insurance policies, but that is how it works. Now, quickly, here are some considerations. It can be fairly cheap, one, because it's county-based. Two, you're getting just a smaller band of coverage. It is highly subsidized. 65% of all the premium is subsidized by the USDA. And here's my point in this next bullet. It is tied to ARC and PLC choice. Obviously, ARC and PLC pay on base acres. Even though this tool is tied to your farm bill choice, it is still crop insurance. So it provides extra protection on what you plant that year, not on your base. And there's no payment limits, no AGI eligibility tests like ARC and PLC have. As we've mentioned several times, ARC eliminates SCO as an option. Now, here's one point I want to make sure we stress. 2019, we had a free pass. 2019, nobody was in a FSA program. We hadn't signed up for ARC or PLC yet. They allowed everybody to purchase SCO in 2019. We saw a lot of farmers do that. I believe your farm doc analysis indicated 6.7 million acres purchased SCO last year. So evidently we have a fair amount of farms or farmers wanting or needing extra coverage. A lot of people purchased SCO last year. They were allowed to do that last year on 2019 and still sign up that same FSA farm in ARC by March 15th of this year. They're allowed to do that in 2019 only. Starting in 2020 and beyond, if they sign up for ARC and then they tell their crop insurance agent they want SCO, they don't get both. The government will cancel SCO and the customer will still be charged 60% of the SCO premium for no additional coverage. Now, here's my dilemma. Their agents won't necessarily know when they switch to ARC County. So we're asking our customers, farmers, to coordinate this with their agents when they do switch, because they could realistically be in PLC 1 year and thus eligible for SCO, switch to ARC County the next year and not be eligible for SCO, and their agent won't know that they've switched unless they tell them. So we're asking our customers to help us coordinate this with them so that they don't find themselves in that predicament where they're not allowed to purchase SCO and they will get penalized at 60% premium. And then you can see just some of the other provisions. As I've mentioned, it's not as popular in Illinois as farm level coverage. One of the reasons why is it does not provide replant protection or prevent plant protection, which obviously was a big deal last year. So there's some considerations for SCO, and obviously they can work with the crop insurance agents to see what kind of value that adds to their operation and what the cost would be.
Okay, last topic here is yield update. And the simple answer to this is you'll be calculating your average yields from 2013 to 2017, taking it times this factor. And if that number is higher than the current PLC yield for the farm, you will take the updated yield. If your current yield is higher than the update yield or what you calculated here for 2013 through 2017, you will keep that yield. Those decisions can be made on an individual crop basis across FSA farms. We would advise using crop insurance yields as the documentation. Note that you will not be providing the documentation when you sign up or for updating, but you should have that documentation in case of an audit later on. So we would suggest using crop insurance yields as the basis for turning in those yields. This decision, you already know what your PLC yield is, current yield is. This farm has a 130 PLC yield for corn, 45 PLC yield for soybeans. This is the FSA farm 156. So you can get that for all your farms. And again, see if the updated yield is higher than that. You can use our spreadsheet to make those calculations. The update yield will only be based on the yields that you have for the farm. There are no substitutes. Unlike ARC-IC, there are no substitutes. It's just the average of what you take times the factor, the national yield factor, that will result in that. Again, that decision is fairly straightforward. You do not have to do that by March 15th. You have to do the yield updating by September 30th, 2020. Update yields will not impact 2019 payments. It's your old PLC yield that matters for the 2019 payments or whatever the current record is. If you update those PLC yields, they begin to become effective in the 2020 and thereafter year. We would again suggest that you update those even if you're taking ARC County, because those payment yields have a way of sticking around forever. So this yield, this might be the only chance you have to update yields, and we could be using those yields for the next 25 years. So update those yields as we move forward. We are done with our presentation here. We'll remind you of our February 24th when we look at impact of updating yield and price information on ARC PLC decisions. Frankly, though, at this point in time, we don't expect that to make much change. So get in there and change and sign up for ARC PLC and help our FSA offices get through all of this materials. A lot of these counties have seen few people or offices turn in their information.
Just want to add one thing on that yield update. Just remember that is a decision for the landowner because it does stay with that farm. So in the cash rent situation, you need the landowner involved in that decision. So just kind of keep that in mind. Is a little bit of a complicating factor, but again, you've got a lot more time on that yield update. And then just to highlight Gary's point, we've said to wait on this decision for as long as possible. And I think we've reached that point where we're going to know about everything we can, particularly with those break-even yields. And so this decision has arrived, if you will.
We got a couple more questions that we haven't answered. One of those is, I had all my corn acres in prevent plant in 2019. Would I still use this Livingston County average for the FarmDoc calculator? What you would do if you're using our ARC-IC tool to calculate the payment is you will enter your prevent plant acres and you will say that you planted no acres. At that point in time, the yield does not matter because you're going to get the ARC County the maximum payment. Here's another situation though. Let's say you have an FSA farm and you took prevent plant on 50 acres and planted 30 acres. what you should be putting in is the yield on 30 acres of the corn yield, and your 50, at that point in time, once you planted corn on some of the acres, your prevent plant acres do not matter as far as the decisions.
And we just want to take a minute and thank the sponsors of this webinar here this morning. So Illinois Corn Growers Association, the Illinois Farm Bureau, and Country Financial, not only for sponsoring, but letting Doug Yoder come over and join us in the webinar studio this morning. We appreciate his time and his work on this as well. So thank you for that support, continued support for this work.
We have a question about whether FSA will be pushed off and not released on the February 20th. I don't think that's the case. I have not heard that rumor. Jonathan is more politically attuned than I am.
I've not heard that rumor either. And I think even more important than those NAS yields is the break-even yields and getting a sense of where you think those are going to be. So we're not expecting the NAS yields to make any major change in what we're calculating right now. It will be a slight update. But again, we don't see any major changes in the calculations at this point. So let's not overly concentrate on those NAS yields. There'll just be a little bit more information to help us out, but likely it's not going to change the outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, related to that, I mean, kind of in this area of having the most information you can to make this decision, we've got the NAS yields released on February 20th. Again, those are not the final actual yields that will be used for ARC County and for the 2019 year, but it will give us a better sense of what those yields might look like. That will be released beyond the sign up period. No expectations for a huge surprise on any of those changes and anything we've talked about today. You know, the other side of things is prices. You know, again, we don't know for certain that corn's going to be in that 380, 385 region. That's what USDA as of January is predicting that 2019 marking year average price. The very last piece of information that would come out on that prior to the March 15th deadline is the March WASDE. And, you know, that's March 10th or 11th. And again, we don't want to make FSA too upset with us. I don't think there's going to be anything earth shattering in that would hugely change decisions. So, you know, we're basically at the point where we have about all the information we need to make this decision. So go in and get it done now.
So we had a question of what prevent plant acres will do to ARC County yields. And here, just so when prevent plant acres do not enter into the calculation of average yields for a county because they weren't planted. So you're not going to get a zero. So pick one county, LaSalle County. There's a lot of prevent plant acres. It's the planted acres in that county that matter. It's not the prevent plant. So so that's why if you're thinking that, well, we had 50% of our acres prevent plant and they're going to get zero, no, it's the 50% of planted acres that matter in that calculation.
Yeah, and a similar question around yields. I mean, remember, ARC County uses that county average yield. That's what it's using. It's using the historic 17 backwards to 13 5-year yield. So your individual yields are not, unless you're the only one planting that county, are not a factor in that county average. So that's why, you know, we keep looking at these, and some of these questions around your individual yields are less important for that decision, or actually not important in the county average decision for ARC County. And on ARC individual, you're using across crops, so it could factor in a different manner that way because you've got multiple crops in the ARC County calculation.
All right, we have this question. The results seem to hinge strongly on your estimate of an MIA probability distribution, but the prices are kind of a black box. Could you illuminate that a bit more? We should write a little paper on this, actually. What we do is we take a look at so for 2019, we use the market year average price that's released by WASDE as the indicator of what the price will be in 2019. We then went back through the past 20 years and said, was what they estimated in 2019. Here's what it actually turned out to be, and calculated all the differences. We then use those differences to develop our distribution for 2019. So history would say that if we look back over that time period, 13% of the time, market year average price would be below 370 if we had a call of 385 in there. For 2020, we begin with that 385 and then go a year forward. All right. And when you go a year forward, you get a lot more variability because prices can be very much, we know very little in actuality about what 2020 prices look like. So we sort of did the same procedure moving forward through time. Those distributions are empirical, but they look, if you want to know what they look very closely like a log normal with fat tails. So I probably told you more than you ever want to know.
I just got confused, but with that, we'll end with one final plea on behalf of the Farm Service Agency. Get into that office now, or get in line, call them, get on the register, and sort of help them ease through this. We got about 30 days left, and so there's a lot of work to do. Anything you can do to help them out is going to be much appreciated by the employees in the offices. So we have exhausted our time, and I think we've reached the decision point for the most point on these programs. So get in touch with FSA as soon as you can. And thanks for tuning in this morning.